Okay then, hello everyone. So today we will be doing um, a review lesson over Python. So again, we're going to be continuing that thing that we started last week, talking about how the different concepts and being able to effectively apply them. Again, I understand that it can be hard at first, and um, many times it is much easier to just kind of understand someone write some code rather than just go ahead and actually being able to do it yourself. And I perfectly understand this, and I understand your concerns. So again, last week I hope that really helped you out, and hopefully you can. This will be able to help you do it again. So last week, if you remember, we went over encoding bats. Um, we went over some of these basic problems. So again, in string one, uh, we learned we did over not start. So we made sure that we went through. We did the correct pseudocode and like how to actually use your pseudocode when you go ahead and you write your program. Um, Next off, let's go back. So we're going to be going over the problems in list 1 right here. This week we might be able to get to logic 1, perhaps even logic 2, but we're going to continue learning these basic things. So we're just going to select a random problem, we'll do this one. And I'll let you guys read over again. So I want you guys to once again go over the pseudocode, and then I'll kind of show you guys how it should be going on in your mind. Okay, so hopefully you guys were able to go over the instructions, write down your own pseudocode. So again, if we don't remember, pseudocode was essentially just the regular code, except instead of going ahead and writing it using actual Python, we go ahead and we just write it using the regular words that we would use if we were to try and describe a program. So let's go ahead and just kind of see. So given an array of integers, so we know that we are given an array of integers. Now on top of this, when we go ahead and do this problem, we want to make sure that we know exactly what is what. So it's going to be called nums, right? So when we go ahead and we write this, it says return a new array length 2 containing the first and last elements of the original array. The original array will be length of 1 or more. So essentially we're not going to have one of those errors where it's like grabbing from the wrong index because it is too big, the array is too small or something like that. So we gotta think about it. How do we go ahead and write this out? So first thing that we have to do is grab the first index. So say beginning, we'll name that our first variable, is equal to the first character of nums, or the first number of nums, whichever one you find more comfortable. And we have end is equal to the last number of nums, right? And then we have to just combine them together. So we do either we can go ahead and return it right away, or we can define another array. We can define as temp or temporary because it's only going to be here temporarily. Beginning plus end, or beginning comma end, like that. Either one will work. And then we go ahead and return end. And this one, if you don't want to put it into code, they can just do beginning and end in an array, like that. So go ahead, read over it, make sure you understand this. You're going to do this over and over and over again. Regardless of what type of programming you're going to be doing, the difficulty of the programming, you are always going to have to use pseudocode if you want to be efficient with it. So I'll give you a couple minutes to just kind of think about this, go over it, and then we can start writing the actual code. Alright, so hopefully you guys really understand this. Again, this is just going to be regular English. We could go ahead and we don't even need to write these lines. We can just go ahead and write them into literal sentences. Right? Beginning is the first number. End is the last number. Right? We can literally just write into sentences. Obviously, it's going to be easier if we already have the layouts that we are going to write our code in. And it's obviously going to be a lot easier for somebody to go ahead and I guess fill out the template, I guess. So again, pseudocode is literally programming with words. It is still using the same logic, using the same formats, using the same everything, except instead of writing code, you're just writing it in words. Right. So when we actually go ahead and convert this, we need to look at the keywords in here. Right. So we have and in here. We have is. We have is. We have in. Right. And then we also have return. Right. So when we go ahead and we do this, we can just go ahead. Begin is equal to nums at 0. Very simple. It's just the very first index. Remember, indexes of an array start at 0, or rather a list. End is going to be equal to nums. And since the length of nums will actually vary, we can either go ahead and we can write -1 like this, or we can go ahead and write len of nums -1. Either one will work. In this case, we'll just use -1, obviously, because it's shorter. Many times people don't understand this. So it is perfectly fine to go ahead and write len of nums -1. Right? So then we go ahead and we want to go ahead and define temp. So temp is equal to beginning plus end, except these two are just characters, right? Or numbers. So we need to make them into actual parts in an array. So we can do this, or we can go ahead and we can type that. Either one will work. In addition, we can just do temp is equal to a blank list, and we do temp dot append beginning and temp dot append end. So you can do both of these, and we just go ahead and return temp. Sorry, not end. And we can see we got all the test cases. So I want you guys to think over this right now. There's going to be some ways we can simplify this, but for right now, just make sure you understand this code. hopefully you guys understand what's going on here. So what we are going to go ahead and do, why does it say invalid syntax? Alright, so again, when you go ahead and you program, you are bound to run into errors. No matter what type of error you run into, you are always going to probably make a mistake from time to time. And when you make a mistake, it is important to go ahead and acknowledge this first of all, and second of all, learn how to get around these errors. So there's more than one type of errors, more than one type of error when you go ahead and you're programming. So I want you to think about for a second, what are the types of errors that you can possibly make? There's only two main categories. I'm going to give you that. Alright, so hopefully you guys know. So when you go ahead and you write a program, there's actually going to be one where it's syntax errors. So syntax errors are going to be, I go ahead and I delete this P here. Tem is not defined because there is just no such thing as tem. When you go ahead and define this, you define it as temp. So if you were to pull only part of the variable name out, then it's obviously not going to recognize it. So that's a syntax error. There's going to be many different types of syntax errors. So if you go ahead and you search up syntax error, you can see these two are very common ones. And if you just search it up in Google, you can find many different types of errors. And so that's kind of like the very basics. So the next one, actually this one does it for us, is going to be logic errors. So logic errors is essentially when we go ahead and we need to say perform an action, except when we write the program, there's no wrong code or anything, except instead the only thing that is wrong is that when we run the logic, it doesn't do exactly what we want it to do. And instead, it will go ahead and it will do some random thing. Say we are trying to add a certain number of values in a list together, and this list needs to be, say, when we add together the list, we only want to add odd numbers, except it also adds even numbers. So instead, you can go ahead and whatchamacallit, it will, since it adds both the odd and even numbers together, then you get a result that you don't necessarily want. Now that is a fairly friendly logic error, because it doesn't lead to, say, your program crashing or something. So instead, what will happen is the program will go ahead and in less friendly cases, it will completely terminate because the runtime is too long. So if you run it in a loop for too long, say a while loop, except you have no base case. By base case, I mean a case when there's a reason to break the loop. So when it goes ahead and does that, many times what you can use is a common debugging strategy. And this debugging strategy is going to be implementing the print function. Because typically you're going to have multiple steps. And um, when you go ahead and you write this printout function, you want to make sure you print it at one of the crucial steps, or one of the steps in which you think you made a mistake. Now, when you do this, when you go ahead and do this, you want to make sure that even if you don't catch the mistake at that point, to not go ahead and just give up. Because many times there's going to be many different crucial spots, or maybe you caught the error but you don't even know it. Which is why, say, copying your return values and putting it onto a notepad, and then from the notepad just going ahead and I guess kind of like running through it in your mind. Well, I want this program to do this, and I print out the list after one iteration, and after two iterations, instead of just going ahead and doing what I wanted to do, the program goes ahead and flips the whole list or something like that. And sometimes you won't notice this because you might have a more subtle error, but sometimes you're going to have a more complicated error. And this, when it's a complicated error, you need to look back at your code and you need to go through line by line, because many times the part of the code that produces an error is only going to be maybe 10 different lines, right? Whereas your entire program is going to be, say, like 500, and that just happens to be a small portion of the program. So when you go ahead and you write this program, many times your logic that you follow isn't always going to be the logic that seems correct, right? Because the program can do unexpected things always, and it's important because programming is essentially just expanding the normal things that a human can do, except into a computer, and this computer can perform it at a much faster, I guess, speed. Alright, so what I want you guys to do actually is go ahead and just go ahead and Google it, one of the common syntax errors. So you can just go Google syntax error Python, and you will see errors and exceptions, syntax errors. You'll find these exceptions. It has many different times, and you'll find handling exceptions and all this stuff. I want you to find any website. I don't care if it's this one, and we'll come back to this in about 2 minutes. Alright, so hopefully you've had your chance to go ahead and just go through one of the errors. It can be anything. It can be invalid syntax while you print this. So I believe, Aaron, your question was, why does it say invalid syntax here? So this invalid syntax it's literally just one of the basic Python operations. So it can be print, like you forgot to put parentheses, right? And typically, if you were to run it in an IDE, if I were to delete this, I think it would say invalid syntax line 7, right? And you will see, alright, well, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wait, line 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, well, for some reason it says line 7 even though it's line 6. I would have to figure that out. So I guess past this, I mean, it's important to not get stuck by these errors, essentially. And if you are going to get stuck at this, it is going to be, I guess, a major blocking point. And if you go ahead and you just allow this to happen, then you won't be able to make much progress. So again, just like in a lot of other things in life, you won't have the opportunity to go ahead and be able to program this if you don't even go ahead and try, right? You can go ahead, you can make that first try, and many times when you make this first try, you're going to fail miraculously, right? It's going to be an absolute horrible failure. And even though it's a horrible failure, you learn something. And learning something is going to be the most important part of this course, right? Because we don't expect you at the end of this course to be some Python expert, to be able to reteach this course easily, right? Because you're not, truthfully, right? And being able to learn the basics of it is not supposed to be something that's like a task, I guess. It's supposed to be fun, right? Programming is not supposed to be something like super serious. It's to do things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. Like you wouldn't be able to process and like draw out a scene of a video game for 200 frames a second every single second for 2 hours straight, but a computer can. And you have the power to make a computer do that. And just by thinking about it, it's a quite fascinating topic. And upon going over this, it's perhaps maybe one of the reasons why I even got into programming. And obviously there's many reasons why you would want to learn programming. You can learn it because you want to do it for a class. You can learn it because you think it's interesting. You can learn it because you want to use it for a project. But in the end, programming is supposed to be something that's fun, right? Not something that you're burdened to do. So, back to this question. When we go ahead and we look at this code, we need to think about how can we simplify this. Well, typically when you define variables, you're going to want to use them more than once. Now, why is this the case? Because variables are used to store values. And when you only use them once, that's kind of a waste, because you could just plug in the value where you put in the variable. So you're just wasting an entire line. So what we're going to do is we can just go ahead and copy nums right here, paste it where that is, and we can just go ahead and delete this line. We can do the same thing with end, right? And again, this step is not going to be easy at first, because when you go ahead and you write your pseudocode, you're most likely going to be like very stuck to the kind of logic that you would follow, right? Not necessarily the logic that is going to be the most simple when you program. As you can see, we got all the test cases. Now, when we look at this and we see, alright, well, we're appending two terms, not just one, right? And when we append two terms, there must be a more efficient way of doing this. So we think about it. We go ahead, we delete this, and we can go ahead and just add it's like this, right? And when we go ahead and we define it like this, we no longer need this initial definition of temp. And then we realize, well, temp is just a variable. Even though it's a special variable, in the end it is still a variable. So we go ahead, we can just delete temp. We can even just delete this return here. And we just rewrite return this array. So we were able to shrink down a 6-7 line piece of code into just one line, right? And this process, I know it all makes sense to you. It probably doesn't, you don't question this in any way because it follows an intuitive pattern. There's nothing too necessarily complicated about it. And on top of it, you probably won't be able to do it yourself, right? And this can seem disheartening at first, obviously. Oh my god, it seems like it's so easy, but when I go ahead and do it, it's not actually that easy, right? But what you have to understand is that programming is going to be one of those special things in life where it's not learning by just looking at a lesson. You can't just look at a lesson and learn how to program. You need to actually do it yourself, make the mistakes, and learn from them. Because only by making those mistakes do you truly know, alright, well, I actually can't do that. Because it doesn't matter what I say, what any of the teachers in this course say, what any article says. If I don't understand why it does not work, I will continue doing it. Right? And that's the same for everything, right? And that's why it's so important to go ahead and understand that programming is learned by experience. So, we were only able to get through one whole question today, but we answered some pretty important ones. Thank you, Aaron, for asking why does say invalid syntax, because that brings about an important aspect of programming in debugging. Debugging is a huge part. Most of the time you're going to be spending about 10% actually writing the program and about 90% of your time actually debugging the program. And as the programs get more complicated, that ratio is just going to become more and more drastic. It's going to start becoming 8% programming, 92%, all the way down to like 1% programming, 99% debugging. It's bound to happen. It's a pattern that I've noticed, at least when I program. And there's nothing really to worry about because, again, programming is learning from experience. And especially when programs get longer, you're going to be making mistakes at a more seemingly, I guess, often rate, when in reality, since they're just more lines, you're going to be just making more mistakes, even if it's at the same or less rate. So, if anyone else has any questions, please ask them right now. But if you don't have any questions, then thank you everyone for watching, and we're going to continue over this review in the next class. Alrighty. Thank you everyone for watching. See you guys next week.